Hi there. It's a Friday morning. It's about 4 days post Hurricane Sandy coming through the area, and as you know, New Jersey was right in the center of the path of Hurricane Sandy. Princeton, we were blessed to be spared from the kind of damage that many of the shore towns were hit with, but most of the town, including us, were still without power today, and a lot of trees down. We have 2 trees down, one in front of our house and one right behind our house. This one right behind me is right in front of our house. Came down, but it's about a 40 or 50 foot pine tree, and is being held up by the power lines behind us. And over my left-hand shoulder, you can see, or my left shoulder here, you can see sort of the root structure of this tree. And it's interesting to see, with the many uprooted trees around town, the kind of root structures that these trees have. You look at a 40, 50 foot pine tree like this, and this root structure is probably about 6 feet tall, 6 feet in diameter, and not very deep at all, maybe a couple feet deep. And you think about sort of this enormous tree being held up by this really flimsy root structure. And of course, the reason for that is that this tree has had an easy life. The soil that I'm standing on, or sitting on here, is rich soil. There's plenty of water in this area. This tree never had to fight for its life and for its survival. It was a pampered tree, and you look then at sort of the type of structure that it has, and it's a very sort of weak structure. And so you have a 50-foot tree being held up by a couple feet deep of roots and 6 feet wide. Is really a fairly sort of a puny support system. You compare that. I'm from Arizona, so the 2 trees that I grew up around were mesquites and palo verdes, which are the main sort of indigenous trees in the Tucson area there in the Sonoran Desert. And these trees have enormous root structures. These are trees that are maybe 10, 20 feet tall, and the root structures on these trees are just huge. You look at a mesquite tree. Mesquite trees can have tap roots that go down 100, 150 foot deep, and that's why, no matter what kind of storm comes through there, you never see older mesquites or palo verdes that are toppled by the winds. These are trees with huge and deep support systems. It made me think of a passage that you're probably familiar with, a passage from James 1 verse 2, where James says sort of this sort of oxymoronic response to his listeners who are enduring many trials. He says, "Consider it joy, my brothers, when you endure trials." And he says, he responds to that question, surely in their mind, well, why would that be? And his response is, so that your faith may be tested, that it may produce full perseverance. And so you look at this tree behind me, and this is a tree that was not tested. This is a tree that was not that did not produce a full perseverance because its system was weak. And you compare that to a mesquite tree in Tucson, and that's a tree that has had to fight for every inch of its life, for every height, every foot that it's grown. It's had to fight for that. And that's a tree whose root structure could support a tree sort of much bigger than this size out here. But it's a tree that's had to fight for its life. And so, I think of sort of the testing that inevitably comes in our life. And you never know when those 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds are going to gust through your life, when that Hurricane Sandy is going to come through, whether that's the loss of a job, whether that's a difficult time with your spouse, or whatever that is in your life, that's that Hurricane Sandy for you, terminal illness or something like that. The question is what does your root structure look like? Has God tested you to bring about full faith, full perseverance? And if you're in the middle of that kind of testing now, I would encourage you, as James encouraged those who heard him, consider it joy. Consider it joy that God would be stretching you, that God would be reaching down your taproot of faith to him this day. I pray that you have a great day. I pray that you and your family are safe, and I look forward to talking to you next week.